Welcome to YogiViews, where my guest is yoga itself, through interviewing those who practice it, teach it, sell it, or simply love it. I am Antonio Sausis. This is the second part of a two-part show where I'm interviewing Swami Ramananda from Integral Yoga. Truth is one, paths are many. This very well-known phrase characterized one of the most revered yoga masters of our time, Sri Swami Satchidananda, whose message of peace inside all people and harmony among all faiths and countries has been heard worldwide. He created Integral Yoga, a scientific system which integrates the various branches of yoga in order to bring about a complete and harmonious development of the individual. His teachings continue to be spread by the teachers and Swamis of his order. I have the pleasure of having here today Swami Ramananda. Welcome, Swami.
Thank you, Antonio. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. Swami Ramananda is a greatly respected senior teacher in the Integral Yoga tradition. Through his affinity for and devoted study of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Ramananda offers practical methods of integrating the teachings of yoga into daily life and coping with stress, depression, and anger. He is a founding board member of the Yoga Alliance and leads advanced level yoga teacher training programs. He offers a variety of workshops in many locations around the country and is currently the president of the San Francisco Integral Yoga Institute. What is tremendously popular in our yoga practice today is the styles of yoga, not the branches.
Sure. Yes.
People know very little about karma yoga or bhakti yoga or raja yoga. Everybody knows about Bikram yoga and power yoga and flow yoga. So the styles.
Yes.
What is the difference between a style and a branch in your opinion?
Well, these styles are different ways or approaches to practicing basically asana. Right? And asana is only...
The yoga of the body, the postures.
The yoga of the body, the yoga postures. And most people are familiar with that these days. You even find advertisements using someone sitting in a lotus position, right?
Yeah.
So these
young, fit, with some money.
Right.
Most probably a woman.
Right. With some special yoga clothes.
Yes.
Right? So these different styles are different ways of practicing those physical postures, which is beautiful, it's helpful, but it's only one small part of the comprehensive picture of yoga. The Raja Yoga that we referred to earlier, the kind of scientific system, offers us an 8-limbed approach, right? 8 different limbs that practiced together have this overall effect of uncovering the spiritual truth that's within us. And asana is only one of those 8. So the yoga postures...
And a fairly basic one.
A fairly basic one. Yes. They're not it's not the more deep, subtle practice that really exposes us to the truth within. But it's certainly a good beginning. It certainly brings about wonderful health benefits in the body. And these different styles appeal to different people of different ages, different capacities. So there's nothing wrong with these styles. But by pursuing this practice of asana alone, the outcome is rather limited. Right? If the practice of asana leads us to discover and make use of the other limbs of yoga, right? The more profound or subtle practices, then of course that's a wonderful pathway. It's a wonderful doorway, if you would. So many people begin yoga that way for the health benefits, and then eventually discover that there's much more to be found.
Do you think that that is still happening today? Do you think that those people that go to a yoga studio or a gym will necessarily be introduced to the spirituality of yoga?
Of course, it's for some people. I guess for those who are looking, it's available. It can be found.
Yes.
Right? They say, knock, and it shall be opened.
Yes.
Right? Seek and you shall find.
Yes.
So I think it's true. For those who are looking, they will find something more. But for those who are satisfied with the asana practice, if that gives them what they need at this moment, then wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think there's any difference? Because you were saying that, or at least I understood that perhaps when people are coming to yoga to resolve suffering, do you think they might have an easier entryway into spirituality, opposite to those that are looking for a better fit body or to sweat more? Or do you think so?
It's a good question. Certainly, the practice of meditation is much more directly working with the root causes of suffering. And ultimately, the practice of asana or yoga postures is a good preparation for meditation. Right? So those who enjoy the yoga postures may not find themselves looking for anything deeper like the practice of meditation. So they may not go further than that. And that they may not use their yoga practice to help them escape the kind of cycle of suffering that happens when we rely on things outside of ourselves for happiness. But those that look for it can get beyond the asana, can use the asana as a part of their spiritual path. Some people, as you kind of raise this question, some people might find a meditative way of practicing the asana practice, right? Where this holistic viewpoint is introduced from the beginning, and the asana is only one part. And there are styles of yoga that have that kind of holistic approach to the yoga practice, so that the emphasis isn't all on the asana practice. Sometimes I see in the American or Western way of practicing yoga, we play out the same kind of just do it mentality that we bring to everything else we do. Yes. And instead of allowing the yoga to teach us, we end up simply bringing our way of doing things into the yoga practice and trying to prove ourselves and make ourselves look good and trying to be superior. And our culture gives so much emphasis to feeling that you're accomplished, that you're number one, right? That you have a gold medal or a star, right? There's so much emphasis to that. Those who are in the top 10, or the Fortune 500, everything is ranked, right? Yeah. So someone can bring that same mentality to their yoga practice. And unfortunately, that makes it difficult to get beyond that mindset and discover something much more profound, where there isn't a ranking, where you can't excel by just trying harder, right? Yeah. That in a way you excel by letting go, by not being attached to the outcome, rather than trying to make yourself into something.
Do you think that the teachers have a responsibility in this? Because today we know that, for example, the integral yoga teaching training is very comprehensive and deep, but we also know that a lot of people who don't have a job become a yoga teacher over the weekend, because why not? Do you think that that influences?
Yes, certainly. Those who are teaching with a limited understanding of what yoga is all about, they won't be able to expose their students to the full spectrum of practice and teaching that yoga has to offer. But again, there's so much yoga available in the United States, particularly here in California, that those who are looking for something deeper will find it. Yeah. It's available. And I think that even in our Western world, the teaching of yoga is becoming something that's more credentialed. And the expectation of a yoga teacher is coming to a higher standard. And that's
Yes.
probably a healthy thing.
Now, in terms of gender difference,
Mm.
because this puzzles me when I first started yoga, it was kind of half and half back then in Uruguay where I started. And now it's an overwhelming majority of women practicing, and men are not practicing so much. Why do you think that happened?
I do observe that, and I've observed it in even other countries where I've traveled and taught as well. Yeah, it's interesting. I think maybe because men are more left brain oriented to some degree, using their sort of reasoning mind and their drive to get ahead in the world, right? To earn a living, to support a family. Men tend to be more oriented that way. And yoga practice is something that's a little more experiential, right? Men might be more attracted to a more dynamic or a stronger practice that's more demanding, a more active practice. But the more subtle practices of yoga are something that one needs to develop sensitivity to appreciate and to grow into. To advance in the more subtle practices, one needs to have patience and become more attuned on a subtle level. So it seems that women are more inclined towards the more experiential things. It's a more right brain activity. Of course, one hates to make generalizations.
Yes, yes.
But we do see many more women.
Yeah.
And that's my speculation, that the women value connection maybe more, value in a sense of interconnection with each other, and value something that requires more sensitivity.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, Swami, that I have been leading some Yoga for Men activity, and it's very interesting that when allowed to connect unmasked,
Yes.
men, we can also appreciate connection. Perhaps we need less words, but we can appreciate connection as well.
Yes.
Now, you being a man, you being a yoga master, what would you say that, could you name one thing that yoga has for men, particularly?
That's a good question. I think what yoga can offer for men is a way of committing themselves. In other words, men are used to getting ahead in the world, accomplishing things, checking things off a to-do list as a way of succeeding, right? Which, of course, is necessary in our world. But men need a pathway to experience something deeper, and I think yoga gives them such a pathway to which they can commit their energy. Men have a lot of energy, right? They're used to expressing their energy to accomplish things. If they can channel that energy in a healthy way towards spiritual pursuit instead of just worldly goals, it can be deeply rewarding for them. So I think yoga can offer them such a pathway where they can use their energy, but use that energy in a way that helps them get beyond identification with the body and mind.
And as I hear you say this, and I know that you have worked on how to apply yoga for anger management or for understanding of anger, we know that in our world today, for women, it's not okay to show anger or to be so, from a stigma standpoint, you know, not that I'm saying that I'm agreeing with that, but on the contrary, for men, it's kind of a good thing to show a little bit of anger. You are supposed to be more man if you show anger. Can yoga help us with anger management?
Absolutely, absolutely. In a few ways, yoga can have a profound impact on working with our emotional selves. With anger and with any emotion, actually. In one way, to develop the capacity to be self-aware of our emotions. oftentimes what happens is the emotions come like powerful forms of energy that sweep us up and that compel us to act impulsively without really making conscious choices. And oftentimes we hurt ourselves or hurt someone else when we react with the energy that comes to us when we're angry. A yoga practice or any meditative practice can help us develop a kind of self-awareness. And as soon as we have awareness, we have choice, right? We have the ability to see what's happening around us and inside of us, and then choose how to respond to that in a mindful way, rather than being lost in a fit of passion.
In the reaction.
Exactly. So that's what a yoga practice can offer, is that ability not to be free of emotion. That's a very kind of idealistic idea, but rather to be free to have the emotion, but not be lost in it. Right? To be with it, to see what's needed to resolve that emotion in a healthy way, even to make use of it when it can be channeled in a healthy way. Anger can be useful.
Yes.
It can be useful to correct a child when it needs a scolding.
To set boundaries.
Exactly.
When needed.
Yeah. When it's governed with love, right? When it's not out of control, when it's not compelling us beyond our conscious choosing. So a yoga practice can help us, but of course it's not easy to do that. To gain that kind of self-awareness requires a regular practice. Requires some dedication so that we can not be completely identified with what we're experiencing, but rather be present to ourselves, our thoughts and feelings, not completely lost in them. I picture it sometimes, to use an analogy, as a river, right? Our thoughts and feelings flow through us like a river, and sometimes the river is a torrent, right? And if we're swept away in that river, right, we have no control. We lose our footing, right? Whereas if we know how to stand strong or stand in a firm ground, even as the water flows, even as our thoughts and feelings emerge through us and run through us, then we can be aware of them, but not overwhelmed by them.
But if I may continue the analogy, when the river runs thin because it's almost dry, then it's also interesting how that is related to life less or to less life. So how interesting that the emotions, while not being the guiding force, also it's not about not having them, not seeing them.
Absolutely. Our emotions can give us wonderful experiences, even joy, right? Even great love for another person is a powerful feeling. So ultimately, we don't want to rid ourselves of those feelings, but we want to be self-aware in the way that we allow them to be expressed. Right?
Now, Swami, because you are well-versed in applying the knowledge of yoga and to everyday life, and this is a bit of an issue sometimes, because when we read the ancient texts, they're a little raw and to the point and pretty drastic, you know. And so, as I hear you speak, precisely those good experiences that sometimes the emotions give us are what leads us to generate a sense of dependency, of the permanence of those things that gives us those emotions for our happiness, to continue having the emotions. And that's how we generate attachments. Which, on the other hand, is number 3 root cause of suffering for Patanjali. Right after egoism. And on the other hand, attachment seems to be inherently human.
Yes, of course.
So how do we integrate these two? How do we make a practice of non-attachment within a fully attached gear?
It's a great question. And of course, it's one that ultimately we all face, whether consciously or unconsciously. And one simple way to put it is a matter of finding a healthy relationship to the things around us, to the people that we love, to the goals that we have. of course, life would be very empty without enjoyable things, without the people that we love, and the deep connections that we can form with them, and without the goals that we have. There's nothing wrong with any of these things. But the problem comes when we see these things as the cause of our happiness, right? When we depend on these things. Then our relationship with another person turns into a kind of business relationship instead of a real giving, a real flow of energy outward through the heart. Right? Our teacher used to tease us about this when one partner would say to the other, "Honey, I love you," and then pause, waiting, "Honey, I said I love you," waiting for the response.
"I love you too."
Exactly,
Or something.
exactly. And when that wouldn't come, well, then the love isn't there. Then the divorce papers are next. So he would tease us and say, well, that's a business relationship.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a matter of finding a healthy relationship with those things so that we can pursue our goals with great passion, but without depending on the outcome. You can see this in any pursuit. This is why a doctor doesn't operate on a family member, right? Why a judge would abstain from a case where a family member is involved,
Yeah.
right? Because it's too close to home,
Yeah.
so to speak, right? So how can we remain neutral? How can we enjoy the doing, the work that we do towards a goal, without depending on the outcome? That's the challenge, to find that kind of healthy relationship. And of course, it's difficult if we have no other idea of how to find contentment, how to find that joy. Right? That's why yoga practice is some form of practice, right? Meditative practice. Any spiritual tradition ultimately has an essential attempt to find that peace or happiness that is inherent, often talked about as the image of God, right? That we're all made in the image of God, to attune ourselves to that presence of God or Spirit. So that presence, that experience of the internal joy makes it much more possible to be involved in the world without depending, without needing those things to be the source of our happiness. So, by saying this, I mean to say that yoga recommends both some kind of practice to help us attune to the self within, the natural joy, the innate sense of love and connection that's already present, and, on the other hand, a relationship with the world around us, right, that's a healthy one, that's not dependent.
Now, Swami, because this is taking us back to Swami Satchidananda's message, independently of which path you are going to choose, what we all need to address is the one truth.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, in the pursuit of that truth, and when anger comes in, we see that now, just as before in the human history, we fight for a spiritual ideal. Yes. We have spiritual wars.
Yes.
And even in today's wars and some of the wars that the United States is involved in, there is a religious component.
Yes.
What has the world not gotten from Swami Satchidananda's message?
It's a great question, Antonio. It's a great irony that the spiritual traditions that you would think could be the place where we would make peace with each other instead have divided us. And I think it's ultimately boils down to some kind of fear, right? Some kind of fear that someone else's way isn't my way, some way of seeing that another approach is unhealthy, that it might, just like one country wants to protect its borders to protect itself, to see itself as safe by securing the territory around it. I think the faiths are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to contain their membership. They're trying to maintain their sense of power and even convince themselves of their importance, of their correctness. And it creates great problems.
Yeah.
You know, whenever I talk about this, I'm reminded of a little anecdote that that perhaps can be helpful here. Swami Satchidananda was asked by a group of medical practitioners at a hospital once, what did he see as the root cause of suffering? And he went to a blackboard in the room and he wrote the word illness on the blackboard. And then he wrote the word wellness. And then he went back to the word illness and circled the I, and to the word wellness, and he circled the we. And that was his answer. That a lot of the turmoil that we experience within ourselves and amongst each other, between the faiths, between the countries, between the races, we divide ourselves in so many ways, between the political parties within the same country. But a lot of those divisions happen from seeing ourselves as separate, right? From thinking of ourselves, identifying with our bodies and minds. And of course, the religion is one of the things that we experience mentally, right? As an ideal, as something that the mind adheres to. So, when the practitioners of the religion identify with their way, then it makes it difficult for them to feel comfortable with another way. And of course, once they've gone deep enough into their tradition, they'll see beyond that limited way, that limited point of view. And I think that's something that we can take heart in acknowledging, is that the saints and sages, the masters of all these traditions, ultimately found the same truths. And they themselves are probably playing cards together somewhere up in heaven.
Yes.
They have no problems with each other, and they have no fear. They have no need to divide themselves and protect themselves because they found something that transcends that limited understanding.
Swami, I have probably 300 more questions for you because your wisdom is deep, and because you obviously have a commitment to have this truth be the shining light. So time is an issue, and we have come to the end of our interview. I definitely would like to invite you to come back some other time if you would like to our show, because I'm sure that both our viewers and myself would like to hear more. I thank you for your mission in the world, for your commitment, for what you are doing, so this can be a better world. I also thank you personally for having come to my show today and shared your wisdom with me and with our audience. And I hope to have you back.
Thank you, Antonio.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure for me as well.
Yes, thank you. This was Swami Ramananda. He is a greatly respected senior teacher in the integral yoga tradition. Through the affinity for and devoted study of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Ramananda offers practical methods of integrating the teachings of yoga into daily life, coping also with stress and anger. He is a founding board member of the Yoga Alliance and leads advanced level yoga teacher training programs. He offers a variety of workshops in many locations around the country and is currently the president of the Integral Yoga Institute in San Francisco. I hope you liked our show today. And if you care to let me know, shoot me an email at antonio@yogiviews.com. I look forward to seeing you the next time.
Very good.